shaming men. Dr. Orion Taraban is a popular psychologist on YouTube who has some very insightful things to say, and I wanted to address something he said in a video he posted titled, Women's Greatest Enemy, Overcoming Pride. He addresses 3 issues of pride that women have, and I wanted to just deal with the second one he addressed and then add some of my own thoughts on the topic. What I did was just jot down some notes as to what he said, and what follows is not an exact quote, but paraphrasing him, and I think it captures the essence of what he says. On the second point of a woman's pride, he says this: women disparage male sexual interest and even find it insulting. I get it that unwanted sexual advances are a problem. Women think men should be appreciating your inner person, the depth of your soul, and you think that our interest in them is superficial, and they should appreciate who they are as a person, and if they just want sex, then men would be better off hiring a prostitute. The attitude is that physical attraction and sex are beneath you, the woman. This is really a form of pride. Ladies, if men did not experience sexual attraction to you, they would have nothing to do with you. This is because men can get all their other needs done more cheaply, more easily, and more enjoyably with other men. For example, I would rather take about philosophy and science with other men. I would rather problem solve and confide in other men. I would rather hang out with and have fun with other men. I would rather go hunting with other men. Without my sexual attraction, which is primed for feminine traits, I would rarely only have contact with women in the normal course of events. And this is how humans have organized their behavior, as men tend to spend time with other men and women with other women, and some commingling here and there. So instead of seeing male sexual interest through the lens of pride as something beneath you, you can see it as an opportunity to have access to a man that may not have another reason for dealing with you. I get you want them to see who you are deep down inside, but spoiler alert, we can't see who you are deep down inside. What we see is your body, and if we did not see that, we would probably not be making the effort to see anything else. What is more, we can hear what comes out of your mouth. I can appreciate that unwanted sexual advances are awkward and uncomfortable. I get that. However, if the first thing that comes out of your mouth due to my attraction is criticism, judgment, and shame, I don't think I really want to know who you are deep down inside. What I just heard and is on the inside is distasteful enough. End. Okay, what he just said there is very insightful and very true, and it got me thinking. Imagine this. You meet a married couple in their 60s, and upon talking to them, you find out they have no children. You may think they tried but could not, but the man unexpectedly tells you that he never had any sexual interest in his wife, so much so, he could never get it up, so they never had any sex, therefore never had children. You might begin to think something is very wrong here. Why would he be with her in the first place? Why is he even married, you may ask? And I think you would be right, because the very essence of male and female relationships are sexual. The essence of even same-sex relationships are sexual. We are programmed by nature to have sexual feelings. It is built in. We have to do nothing to create these feelings. They naturally arise within us. If we did not have the sex drive, then human life would quickly become extinct. So Dr. Taraban is right. There is no need for a man to have an interest in a woman if there is nothing sexual involved. As a married man, I do not hang out with single women. And if I were doing so, you would suspect something more is going on, and rightfully so. Of the women I do interact with at work and other places in public, I do not get their phone numbers and then hang out with them on the weekends. If I did, others would suspect I had a sexual interest in them, and they would be right to think so, because we all know naturally that men have a sexual interest in women. And the other way around. Like Dr. Taraban, I get it. Some men can be creepy, strange, and awkward with their sexual attraction for women, and even do creepy and off-putting things. Some men just do not know how to approach women and come off as awkward and off-putting. And some of it is very off-putting. And it is really creepy when older men have an interest in underaged girls. We now see popularized online where men are being caught in stings to meet an underaged girls. We all know, without anyone really having to mention it, they are interesting in a sexual encounter with an underage girl. And when they say they were just trying to warn her or make up some other lame excuse, we all know it is bullshit. Big time bullshit. Because we know men's interest in women is sexual. And it should be with women our own age, as I must say, I do not get it with these men and underage girls. And maybe we need Dr. Tarabon to explain that psychology. I can't do it for you. It is clearly endemic, and there's a lot of unreported sexual abuse going on out here. In addition, there's a lot of maladaptive sexual behavior going on out there. I really can't put my finger on it, but I think there's a big difference between sexual predatory behavior and natural male sexual interest in a woman. Once again, I think someone like Dr. Tarabon could do a better job of slicing and dicing this issue than I could. Anyway, my point being that men's primary interest in women is sexual, and all this stuff about men should get to know me first, and like me for who I am deep down inside, is not how reality works. Men, first and foremost, are attracted to a woman sexually. How she looks matters. The idea of fat acceptance and not making yourself look attractive is not going to go over well in attracting men. It is well known, men are more visual when it comes their attraction to women. Women know this instinctively and invest a great deal of time making themselves look attractive. You will hear wise men say that men marry the body, women the lifestyle. This is a truism that comes from a lifetime of observation. This is what really happens and has for the whole history of mankind. It is how it is. Which brings me to another point. The world's oldest profession is the world's oldest profession just because of this point. A man's inborn natural sex drive is what fuels and powers the world's oldest profession. So all of these laws banning it, all the moral outrage over it, and the religious edicts against it are going up against nature, and nature always wins. It is not going away, and regardless of any law or edict against it, it still thrives. With that fact in mind, it would seem more reasonable to legalize it and regulate than to ban it. All bans upon it have been an utter failure. And locking people up in cages for doing this seems crazy to me. A man, with his inborn sex drive, may find himself in a sexless marriage, and the reasons for the sexless marriage are many-fold. But image a man who has a wife who may simply not be interested in having sex anymore, for who knows why. Or he is coming home to a household where the common ground is the battleground, and frequent arguments erupt, and therefore there is no sex, or so little there might as well be none. Or image a wife that is constantly nagging a man, driving a wedge between them, leading to a sexless marriage. They could be growing apart. Or a man has a wife that is always finding fault with him, and this leading to a sexless marriage. Or a wife that has let herself go and has become overweight and very unattractive. Or the man has a wife that shuns all his efforts to make the marriage work. Or maybe the man is abusive, and the wife simply does not want to have or feel any closeness with him, and therefore it becomes a sexless marriage. Men can also be the source for the sexless marriage. There are many more reasons for a sexless marriage, and there are a lot of them out there. In our culture, cheating on one's wife is forbidden and taboo. If he does not have it with his wife, he may secretly find it with another woman. He may secretly turn to prostitution. The prostitute may be perplexed when the John shows her a picture of his wife and children. For him, he values his wife and children, but at home, the one thing that naturally attracted him to her is gone, and it probably is not going to come back. Where else is he going to get it? A married and highly successful professional may not be able to be with a highly attractive woman, but for the right price, he can live out his sexual fantasy, something he may not be getting at home. A high achiever with autism may be socially awkward and not be able to meet women, but for the right price can purchase what he deeply desires. Of course, there are many other reasons men turn to prostitution, but a spoiled marriage can be a big one. The point being that men place a high value upon sex, which is based upon how she looks. Not everyone can just turn it off and be a disciplined monk. The fact that Dr. Tarabon mentions that women do shame and criticize men for their sexual attraction, which is natural and primary, would indicate to me this is common, and paying for sex bypasses all of this. I wonder how many men, at one time or another in their life, have been shamed for this natural attraction. And I am not talking about abnormal or predatory behavior, but just normal sexual interest. Being called dirty, or being called a pervert, or being accused of having only one thing on their mind. I have heard other men tell me that I should do as they do and view all women as if they were your mother, sister, or daughter. I think this is absurd and not realistic because if we all did that, then no one would form sexual pair bonds and sexually reproduce themselves. This is another way to shame men for their inborn sexual drives. And those men suggesting such a thing makes me wonder if this is their way of attempting to suppress their inborn attraction to women. And most of us are not over-sexualized and making advances on every woman we find attractive. I remember I was working one day with a coworker, and I saw an attractive woman and commented on her, and he said to me, "I also have a problem with like that." And I was taken aback by this comment as I was simply stating the obvious and leaving it at that and had no intention of approaching her or anything else. To me, it was like saying the sunset is nice. Later on, I found out he had at least 6 separate incidents where he made extremely inappropriate sexual comments to women at work. For example, he whispered in one woman's ear, "When I F my wife, I think of you." This is clearly unwanted sexual advances that are highly inappropriate. Once again, nothing happened to him. There is clearly something going on here that needs the insight of a professional like Dr. Tarabon. Like I said before, at times men can be out of bounds, excessive, overly aggressive, and inappropriate. The Hollywood casting couch comes to mind. But it is not these kinds of incidents I am referring to, but just when things are normal and natural. It is dangerous to express this normal and natural dive for men. Nowadays, in the workplace, sexual harassment can be considered the slightest thing. For example, a company I worked at considers anything that is offensive to be harassment. And what is offensive is open to a wide array of interpretations. For example, if I am talking to someone and I say chick, and they say broad, and a woman walks by and overhears it, they can claim this is sexual harassment just because they were offended by such words, and we were not even talking to her or even aware she was there. One particular woman I worked with said she was being harassed because she said men at work were looking at her ass. Never mind, she wore skin-tight jeans every day. In another incident, I had a coworker who was working out of town and tapped a woman on her shoulder to get her attention and asked what there was to do around town at night. She sued the company for sexual harassment and won a settlement. It makes me wonder if there is not an easy opportunity to get easy money. When one of my bosses told a female, underlying that she could get a better paying job if she slept with him. That is sexual harassment and highly inappropriate. He was not fired, just asked to resign, and it was all swept under the rug because such lawsuits for corporations have become extremely expensive. I remember hearing on CNN years ago about a Fox newscaster that settled with Fox News for $22 million for sexual harassment case, and the same week I heard of a $10 million settlement for a woman who was almost killed after being rear-ended by a tractor trailer. There is clearly something backwards about all of this, but it showcases how sexual harassment is considered a primary crime. And I am not saying there are not cases where it is far out of bounds, but it has swung the other way, and almost anything can be considered harassment. Someone asking a woman out for coffee is not harassment, but has been claimed to be in some cases I have personally known about. So we do have a highly oversensitive environment where men now know that the best policy is to show absolutely no interest in women at the workplace, at church, at school, or any other public gathering where the slightest thing could be misinterpreted. Hiring a prostitute instead of asking a woman out for a date, even if it is considered immoral and is illegal, is a better option from a pragmatic standpoint. You are not going to get fired, rejected, or shamed. Not that I recommend it, but I can see how this is becoming a better option. I am wondering how many men out there can relate to an experience where a woman has in some way shamed or criticized them for showing an interest in them sexually. I wonder how common this is, as men certainly do not relate such experiences to each other, as I think it embarrassing, and they do not want to be seen in a negative light by other men. But I think it happens more often than we think. I think a part of this disconnect is that women and men have different ways leading towards sexual arousal, whereas for men, it can be more spontaneous. And for women, there needs to be some kind of mental mood of relaxation and some kind of foreplay or build up. And they need to feel some kind of comfort towards the man. I know young men nowadays are caught up in what are nowadays a new phenomenon of OnlyFans, which started out for content creators of any kind to connect with their fans, but has become primarily a site for women selling the idea of sex to men at large. And lots of young men have wasted thousands and thousands upon the being sold the fantasy that the attractive woman on the other side of the internet actually is interested in them. In reality, she only cares about the money. OnlyFans post revenues in the billions, and I am sure there will always be naive young men out there wasting money on this, but I think it is going to decline due to the fact that nowadays many men are being wised up by older men online and also being shamed for being what they call a simp. In addition, the fact that there are now millions of other young women racing to get the pot of gold. A few outliers have. This massive increase in the supply inevitability means the chances of making big money in this market substantially decreases. There are always a few outliers that do well, but the truth is that with the large numbers of women swelling into the OnlyFans market, the vast majority are not going to be making a lot of money. And with the simps getting wiser and the shaming increasing, it means a lower supply for the growing OnlyFans women. Now, young men are shamed for such a thing, but I can understand in a culture where being shamed for just showing a natural interest in women can get him shamed in person, and for it to be off limits at places like work and in public at large, it would seem to me that online has become a safe place where men can express this interest. But their natural interest is being exploited by corporations and women whose only motive is to milk them for everything they have. Andrew Tate expressed this and even bragged about this very openly online, how he exploited other young men and saw them as stupid simps to be exploited and taken advantage of. By the way, I do not like Andrew Tate and have a lot of bad things to say about him. Nevertheless, what we have are a bunch of economic predators fleecing young men. This is being pointed out by many older men to show young men that such a thing is a trap and a waste of money, and I think this message is catching on. The truth is that many of these men have limited amounts of money, and when that runs out, they have no choice but to quit. I think being shamed makes young men feel terrible, as if there is something inherently wrong with them. It does not help that religion shames lust. I even saw a billboard ad decrying lust as something that will lead you to hell. I want to ask these ministers, if there were no lust, no sexual desire, what would happen to the human race? If we go back to my fictitious example at the start, I think we know where it would lead. It was sexual desire that brought the pastor and his wife together, and it was sexual desire that brought them the family they so much put upon a pedestal, yet they condemn it in you. Even so much so as spending thousands advertising it on public billboards. Men are visual, so they are naturally attracted to pornography. If I were to go out onto any street in America and I asked any random man if he has seen pictures of naked women, I think I would be hard-pressed, if not find it impossible, to find one man who would say no. And if they did say no, I think it would be reasonable to suspect he is lying. This is the reality of it because it is who and what we are. We are by nature programmed to be sexual, to survive and to carry on the human race. So are animals, insects, and plants. We all have sexual reproduction programmed into us, and it is not going away. An argument can be made that there is a dark side to pornography. An argument can be made it can be harmful to various degrees. An argument can be made that pornography can be something that exploits and has all kinds of unhealthy and extreme behaviors. Some of it is tied to organized crime and sexual slavery. All of this being the case, I also think an argument can be made that there can be good things about pornography. Men are naturally visual. They like to look. They are turned on by what they see. They are attracted by a woman's looks, as Dr. Taraban so clearly points out. So pornography appeals to a man's natural tendency to be visual. So how can we hold this natural tendency against him? But we do. Religion excoriating us for being lustful, women complaining that men are looking at their ass, women shaming men for having a sexual interest in them, an oversensitive public environment, and so forth, are funneling men into such channels as pornography, OnlyFans, and the like. Women can go online, get hundreds of men liking them, and most of the men end up getting rejected or played. So, what do men do with all of this shaming, criticizing, being maligned as simps, and have no opportunities in many public places do? They simply look for love overseas, where they can find plenty of attractive women who will be interested in them. They are told these women only want to use them to come to America to have a better life. Maybe so, but as I said, women marry the lifestyle. Unfortunately, these men get shamed for seeking mail-order brides. They can't win. I remember listening to the Tom Lakis radio show, and you can find his old broadcast still on YouTube. And he was talking about the topic of sex with women, and he said that if she is not putting out after the third date, to call it off and go find someone who will put out. What he is clearing saying echoes what Dr. Taraban is saying. Men really have no reason to be interested in women if there is no sexual interest involved, by and large, outside of normal business. I think people like Tom Lakis do reflect the reality of what the natural male mindset is, as it is programmed by nature to be this way. And of course, Mr. Lakis gets a lot of pushback from women who come onto his program to tell him otherwise, and he sets them straight about the reality of it. I may differ with Mr. Lakis on some things, as in his promotion that men should not have children. For him, that makes sense, and I can see his logic in it. But ultimately, I think it is a waste for a man to never have children, and is something men should strive to have. But of course, I can't speak for all men, and for some men it may not be for them. And I think Mr. Lakis can agree, we are all not the same. But if no one had children, the human race would disappear very quickly. I think women waiting till their mid-30s to have children is problematic, as they then rush to find anyone, which can often turn out to be the wrong person. And sometimes they find they can't have children at this age. And I think young single mothers are finding it hard to find a man, because young men are now wising up to the fact that a single mother is bad news, even if she is hot and sexy. There are plenty of single sexy women with no children overseas. I think the fact that divorce favors women and they get primary custody of the children, even in extreme cases where the mother is clearly awful and the man has to pay child support and give up half or more of what he has, is a financial ruin for many men, and men being logical and seeing what has happened to their fathers are opting out of marriage and children, as the long-run game could be a disaster for them personally. So being like Mr. Lakis and just having only a sexual interest in women is what we see more and more of going on. And the birth rates and marriage rates reflect this. I am curious in the comments if men could tell us all the different ways women have made them ashamed of having this natural sexual interest. I do not think the same happens to women. And if it does, it is hardly at all. I think Dr. Taraban is attempting to give women good advice, and instead of shaming men for this, to use it as an opportunity to find the men they desire most. I think men have to be careful not to be exploited or used by their natural tendencies. With all of that said, tell me what you think. This is Good Medicine signing off and wishing you the best. Sincerely, and Godspeed.